Welcome to Gulf Rising. I am your host, Misha Mayer.
We're gonna first do this direct action song. The people gonna rise like the water.
The people gonna rise like the water.
We gonna face this crisis now.
We're gonna face this crisis now.
I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter.
I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter.
Saying keep it in the ground.
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 The people gonna rise like the
Gulf Rising is brought to you by fishermen involved in sustaining our heritage and the Habitat Recovery Project. For more information, follow us on social media at gulf.rising and visit our website at gulfrising.com. Today we will be talking about chemical waste mismanagement.
They can't account for where this waste goes. They say it can't go in or out, but they don't have any records of it being sucked out of there. So where is it?
If the toxic waste that you have stored underground disappears, where does it disappear to?
They were literally reporting that there was severe leakage in these tombs that were holding this waste.
Underground tombs filled with unidentified toxic waste leaking into the water table? Check.
Itchy eyes, runny nose, our heads started pounding, and there was like this nauseated feeling in our stomachs.
Hazardous material in an above-ground pavilion, fuming fully unregulated toxic waste into the air? Check.
They were dumping it straight into the ground.
A company dealing with the toxic waste of several other plants in Louisiana, taking the overload and dumping it down a back road and straight into the ground? Check. The horrors are innumerable, but I'm going to try on this episode of Gulf Rising.
Black leaves in the Mississippi River. Black leaves in the Mississippi fire. Black leaves in the Mississippi choir. Black leaves on the Mississippi land. And we've got and cotton, we've got sons and daughters, we've got grit and glory, we've got mother stories, we've got strength like towers, we've got hope and power.
God made woman with an iron hand, raised her up on heaven's land. God made woman with an iron hand, raised her up on heaven's land.
Strength like towers, we've got hope and power.
God made woman with an iron hand, raised her up on heaven's land.
The first that I caught this chlorine-filled wind of the Chemical Waste Mismanagement Incorporated, a facility that deals with all of the chemical waste from petrochemical plants and LNG facilities from Louisiana to Texas, was when they unceremoniously didn't show up to their public comment meeting on May 15th, secretly delaying it to Juneteenth, which alone gave me the ick, and yet I really had no idea what was to come. This is not the first time that a meeting has been delayed. In fact, this company is known for delaying, canceling, and straight up not telling people about meetings in order to keep the public from participating.
This has happened before where they sent someone there to say the meetings have been canceled, everybody gets in their car and go home, and then they act like no one showed up to the meeting. So this has happened at other types of meetings like this, and we wanted to give them enough time to show up if they were going to show up. So we waited till about 6:20, and everyone decided, since the facility was only a mile or so down the road from where we were meeting, we would all take a field trip and see what we could see.
This is Robin, who has been spending the last few months doing all things chemical waste mismanagement. And I love how she says field trip, because when I think of a field trip, I think of an educational experience, and that is exactly what they got.
Well, as soon as we turned on this road, all of us started to have itchy eyes, runny nose, our heads started pounding, and there was like this nauseated feeling in our stomachs. So none of us said anything until we got to the very end of the road, and we're kind of looking at each other like, oh, your eyes are burning too, huh? And so we turned off the fence and got out of the car to ask Michael and he said, I don't smell anything anymore in my eyes. He's like, I guess that sadly I'm just immune to it.
Let's talk about why Michael is immune to this. Michael Tridico has been watchdog for environmental justice in Southwest Louisiana for 50 years. This man has been going to all of the meetings for chemical waste mismanagement and writing comments everywhere that he can to make sure that the environment that he inhabits is protected as best as he can. It is no wonder, being this inundated in industry, that Michael is quote unquote immune at this point. I personally think that he invokes a higher power to protect this planet. But to each our own. When we refer to Michael in this episode and in future episodes, know that we are referring to the expert.
So we're all standing outside of our vehicles at this point, and we're talking about what we can see underneath this pavilion that is at least 2 football fields long. And he said, Robin, this is the covered area I was telling you, those are the mounds of chemicals and hazard waste that they don't identify what it is, that is just openly stored under simpleness. You can see it from the road, every bit of it. It's filed to the ceiling. And there are workers out there that tend to this stuff, like shoveling this stuff, that aren't even wearing hazmat suits.
That sucks.
It's insane. And literally all of us had headaches.
The only thing I can think of being worse is if it was somehow also affecting the water.
Out in the open, there is literally no protection from the runoff, and you could see trails that had gotten wet on the sides of these mounds, and where that was running off into the grass off the cement slab was dead all the way to the ditch. And all of the ditches around there that are supposed to contain runoff water, we noticed were bone dry. However, the ditches on the other side that would be a complete red flag and surely would be grounds for an investigation were all full of water. And around those ditches, the greenery was dead. You could definitely see that there was something wrong with that. And it was the opposite side of the fence, where it should have been green grasses and not being affected by this, that was really dead. And unfortunately, that is the side where it would eventually run into the intercoastal, the ship channel.
The Intracoastal Waterway is a 3,000-mile inland waterway along the Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico coasts of the United States, running from Massachusetts southward along the Atlantic seaboard and around the southern tip of Florida, then following the Gulf Coast to Brownsville, Texas. Some of the sections of the waterway consist of natural inlets, saltwater rivers, bays, and sounds, while others are artificial canals. It provides a navigable route along its length, without many of the hazards of travel on the open sea. So once it gets to the Intracoastal, it's everywhere. And while over the past 50 years, this company has refused to answer the question of what is under the pavilion, we have some clues.
On that part of the fence, it has these hazard signs that say asbestos warnings. So we're not sure if that's because of what's underneath that pavilion. It is interesting that there is no asbestos warning signs on other parts of the fence where that area isn't.
We also have received possession of a document that details a load transported from Port Arthur, Texas to Chemical Waste Management in Sulphur, Louisiana, that contained toxicity codes D004 through D009. In order, these are arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, and mercury. This document notes that in this one truck, there was nearly 15 tons of toxic waste being brought to Chemical Waste Mismanagement. If they've been in business since 1954, No wonder they have football fields of toxic waste. So if all this extremely hazardous material is so loosely contained, how is this legal?
This doesn't have to be documented, or they don't have to disclose the substance, what this is made of, because they're technically just storing it temporarily. So there's no regulations or policies around temporarily storing another facility's chemical waste.
Well, how long is temporary? Is one of the 6 to 8 questions that Michael Tritico has been asking for 45 years and has yet to receive an answer. When we come back, we'll talk about what's going on beneath the ground, strange mass animal die-offs, and a whole bunch of hearsay about what this company does to keep its business, if not the literal business of its waste management, under wraps. You are listening to Gulf Rising.
Where is she?
Come on back, peaceful.
Whoa, easy now.
I'm gonna be free or die.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
You have made it 100 miles to freedom. Would you like to pick a new name to mark your freedom?
Parentum.
Early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine, we're gonna start moving towards that separating line. I'm wading through muddy waters. You know I got a made up mind, and I don't mind if I lose any blood on the way to salvation. And I fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on.
Harriet, welcome to the Underground Railroad.
And I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone, and I just might fail, but Lord knows I'll try. Shine stars lit up the sky. Stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Do you hear
were down at the end of this road, and I said, right as we were getting out of the car, I said, everybody watch your back, because it would not surprise me if they had one of their workers come flying down here to see what we're all doing. And as we were saying this, and Michael's talking about the secondary hazard material under the pavilion, here comes this jacked up diesel truck roaring towards us.
In an ideal world, citizens on the side of a road participating in harmless civic duty would be honored and revered for the work they were doing. In the wild, wild west of Southwest Louisiana, amidst the billion-dollar industry of the petrochemical industrial complex, anything that may bring more regulations draws industry ire, which on a side note seems incredibly ironic and short-sighted, as safety for one means safety for us all, and the people who will be affected worst of all are those on the ground floor. Yet here comes this man, this neighbor, to patrol and inspect to make sure that no one is looking too closely.
And this man comes up in a panic, and he's like, what are y'all doing out here? Is there something going on? And we're like, sir, who are you? And he's not wanting to answer the question. I'm like, did they send you down here? And I have this on video. He's like, I live right here, and, you know, what, is everything okay? And we're like, yeah, we're on a field trip. And he's like, I don't get it. What are y'all doing? And we're like, we're just here on a field trip. And he's like very upset about this. You can tell he's not really sure what to do. And he finally pulls in his driveway, but before he pulls off, I asked him, how is it living next to a place like that? And it was like eerie the way he responded, but he said, all is well, when clearly none of us were well. So there's no way that he is unbothered totally, especially when neighbors as far as 4 miles away from this are complaining of the smell being so horrendous at times during the day that you can't even go outside your house and you stay nauseated. They can't run their air conditioners because the smell gets so strong.
Why a man would say, all is well, a strangely contrived sentence to say in front of a group of very unwell people. My guess is hush money. This wouldn't be the first nor the last instance of companies such as this one using money and litigation to keep people quiet about what they have experienced at their hands.
There has been instances around these same facilities that are always the problem, that animals have mysteriously died at mass numbers. And even 250 head of cattle at one point near Mossville just dropped dead in a cow pasture somewhere. And no explanation for that. They paid the man off and he kept quiet.
If you only knew about the above-ground pavilion, it would seem pretty far-fetched that runoff would be the cause of mass cow deaths. However, that football field's long pavilion is far from the largest amount of toxic waste being stored by this mismanagement facility.
There is a cell, a large cell underneath where this pavilion is now. They so say relocated it to a different portion of the property that they never really explained why. Michael thinks that there is probably still chemicals being held in that, and that creates a whole nother set of issues if that is the case, because now you have unidentified hazardous secondary material on top of an area that you don't know exactly what's still in that tomb, but there has to be something in there. He said, where would they have put it? If you do the calculations, there's only so many tombs that they can put this stuff in. That's on record. So unless they're illegally storing it in other tombs that aren't documented, there would have had to be an exchange somewhere. And you don't see that actually. There's a lot more documented waste than they have permits for. So it's really hard to tell what's going on underneath the surface. And that's just dangerous.
Oh, wow. So they have tombs, like what you put dead people in. Those things are made of concrete, right? And a concrete tomb is about 12 feet wide.
And back in the 80s, there was a calculation, and Michael was certain that there was at least 3 superdomes of chemical waste buried underground there.
That's a lot of waste down below 40 years ago, and a lot of waste up top.
Now we have this stuff sitting on top dry, that wind's blowing it around. We have this stuff underneath, and who knows what's in there and how this would react to being in contact with the other above it.
You mean the other that is actively draining into nearby ditches?
So the weight of this stuff on top of there makes it incredibly prone to fractures in the clay and the layers of sand.
Clay and sand isn't sounding as solid concrete, but I have to remember, this is Louisiana. There is absolutely no solid ground here. Even if you put something solid inside the ground, it cannot be solid because it is not resting on anything solid.
They said that the way they had this stuff layered was foolproof. The way that layers of sand and gravel, the way they do this is supposed to protect and catch anything that spills over or out of this tomb.
Somehow this doesn't sound foolproof to me.
Like they realized in the 80s when they did a well water test inside one of the rice bins, when the farmer would turn on the water to fill the rice bin up, it would draw from all the different layers of sand, not just the Chico aquifer. So they went to the board. They said, this is what we found. So if that's happening for these rice bins, then we know that there is cross-contamination because these chemicals are showing up in this well over here by the rice bin. And he's pulling water from all these areas. They knew this by seeing that the water draw out of the sand in every layer. So they were like, this isn't going to work. And they put in the slurry wall.
Slur, verb, to pass over a fact or aspect so as to conceal or minimize it.
It was brand new, so the science really hadn't been there to disprove it yet, but it was questionable even back then when they presented the slurry wall, which is a layer of slime, mud that is supposed to prevent things from being able to escape out of this zone into the Chupik Bayou.
The Chupik Bayou is a body of water that borders the chemical waste mismanagement facility.
That can't be the case either because now they've proven there was fractures in this along cell 7 for years now that no one's addressed. And if it was doing it there, then who's to say that it can't do it on all sides of the slurry wall?
Like I was saying, nothing solid is underground in Louisiana. When we come back, a secret underground river, which government agencies to write, and the voice of the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Tritico himself. Stay tuned for more of Gulf Rising.
Crazy.
the slurry wall isn't working.
Now he's been able to prove that this layer of protection that they said you could not penetrate, that there was no way the slurry wall was going to let any of the chemicals in or out. We now know that that's not the case, that it always has leaked into the bodies of water around there.
How can you tell?
They could tell by a flyover in 1982, I believe it was, that there was dead trees that led all the way down these cutoffs to Shoe Peak Bayou. And eventually that ties into the ship channel.
Maybe it's just me, but I feel like trees are harder to kill than, say, grass.
Recently, right before this meeting was scheduled, I had gone up into my first flyover and I was just taking pictures on my cell phone. I'd never seen anything like this. It was this dark black hole in the ground and I was like, what the hell is that?
What the hell is that is right. Is it hell?
So I knew it was important, but I didn't really know what I was looking at. So I started snapping all these pictures in the airplane of this place, and we did several little turns around, and I was able to get some really good photos that later I was inspecting on my computer, looking at it at a larger view, and noticed that there was these weird patterns of brown, where the grass was dying off, and it led to bodies of water, even to the intercoastal. In one shot, you could see all the way to the intercoastal. And I sent it to Michael and said, hey, I don't even know what this place is, but this is, alarming to me. Look how dark this hole looks. And he said, you've discovered the CWMI site.
The technical definition for this entrance to hell is the dump site, not a cell holding 40-year-old toxic waste, nor a pavilion holding quote-unquote temporary waste. A hole in the ground is where the permanent toxic waste gets dumped.
And so we started looking at these photos together, and he realized that I was onto something. There was definitely a pattern of the trees dying where there shouldn't even be a runoff canal. So he started to pull these maps and stuff from before where these concerned areas were, and sure enough, it lined up with some of the stuff we were looking at in these photos. And he's like, oh yeah, this is really not good.
You know it's bad when the man who has been going to the meetings for this company for the past 50 years says, oh no, that's not good.
I had the old U-2 photographs, the spy plane photographs, and you could see this thing curling around and going to Bayou Shoe Peak, but it was overgrown with trees and stuff.
Now, Robin and Michael both have done flyovers, and what that means is that they've taken a plane and flown over the area. The perspective that you can get from the sky is one that you obviously can't get anywhere else. It's called a bird's eye view for a reason, and Michael and Robin have a keen bird's eye view of this whole situation.
And what it was an old buried river channel surface manifestation. In other words, Bayou Shoe Peak used to go like this, and then it changed to like this, and this all got dirt on top, but it's not very deep. This buried river channel cut across like this. Cell 14 closed is on top of the buried river channel. Cells 1, 2, and 3 right here on top of the buried river channel.
If the buried river channel isn't very deep, and we know that the slurry wall doesn't work, that means that there is a huge increased possibility that the toxic waste that is leaking into Bayou Shoe Peak, to the intercoastal waterway, and out to the Gulf of Mexico.
Michael said from a flyover, they were able to see die-off of the trees around that river channel that they claimed didn't exist, but Michael and Mary Ellender and Peggy Franklin were able to prove did. Wow. Yeah. So it's very suspect, to say the least, and there is definite signs. I've seen it with my own eyes now. The hole in the ground was horrifying, but then to get home and really start to pick apart the pictures and blow them up in different angles, it was like, wow, something seriously wrong with this. You could see these little channels cut from the dump site to the bayou.
If you were a company that was bent on covering up your misdoings, and you knew that people could see the effects of your poison from the air, you may try to cover that up. And maybe because you are poisoning the air and water, which are actively harming the neighborhood, maybe an anonymous person will speak out.
They called me right as I had come back from my flyover to say, I can't say very much, but I want you to know that there are several 18-wheeler loads of sod being hauled into this place. Now, I had not said anything to anyone else yet, but I had just got the pictures blown up that me and Michael agreed were pretty important, and there might be something more to look into there. And one of the things that I had noted to myself was from the flyover, it kind of looked like there was fake grass in areas that further out were completely dead. And they said to me, I needed to look closer at why this place would be hauling in grass. And I said, well, it sounds like they're trying to cover the dead stuff around there. Now, if you think about the timeline and when they decided to call this public participation meeting, it is extremely suspicious that they started to haul in sod, and they were not mistaken. They said this is definitely what it is, and they're unloading it. And so when I brought this to Michael's attention, he said, wow. So you see where you said there was fake grass or looked like there was something wrong with the greenery? He said, if you take a look at this map and this buried river channel, that is the reason this place was always a concern. They were burying waste on top of a river channel that's still connected to the Shoe Peak Bayou, and it would have been on the opposite end of where it's considered safe for them to have overflow or runoff.
The desire to cover up wrongdoing is so visceral in this episode. Luckily, there's more than one way to test the well. When we come back on Gulf Rising.
Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, bear this in mind. Oh, a good friend is hard to find. Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, you know your mother may talk about you. Oh, your sisters and your brothers too. They don't care how you're trying to live. You know they talk about you still. Oh, but bear this in mind. A good friend is hard to find. Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, bear this in mind. A good friend is hard to find. Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, you know the grin in your face. You know they jump you up and down. Oh, soon as your back is turned, you know they try and beat you down. Oh, but bear this in mind. A good friend is hard to find. Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, don't you mind people grinning in your face? Oh, don't you mind
Got your mind, people grinning in your face.
Imagine telling a company 50 years ago that they were going to poison an area, seeing the exact spots where that would occur, then spending 50 years having to say, I told you so. Why aren't you doing something about this? In the beginning, there was hope.
We did a well right here to prove that the Buried River Channel sand was that wide. Governor Treen gave us the money, and we drilled a well right here and proved. Now, where that well is, I don't know. It's grown up with weeds, and it's probably run over by bulldozers, and it's probably no longer possible to use it. But it was our way of saying, okay, we're right next to you. If your stuff leaks this way, we're going to catch it. What we got them finally to do at Willow Springs was screen in the top, middle, and bottom of the sands. Because you got some things that float, like oil with chemicals in it. You got some things that sink, like chloroform. And you got some things that are dissolved, and so they're going to be in the middle in the whole thing. And so if you just test, if you're screened and you only test in one layer, you're going to miss what's floating or sinking if you're in the middle.
So digging a well on the side of the property, testing at 3 different layers, these seem ideal.
What we learned at Willow Springs was you've got to be sampling monthly, because what's happening is what we call pulsing plumes. They put in stuff at different times, it leaks, and like if you put in EDC in January, and you put it again in June, you put it again in July, and you're monitoring over here, well, this set is going to be coming along, and this set is going to be coming along, and that one's going to be faster. You're not going to have a predictable,
right,
because you got things coming from different times of insertion and different distances from different cells. I mean, they got different cells. And so you got water interconnections vertically and horizontally.
The only thing that they would let Michael and Mary Ellender and them do was use a citizen testing well. So they could go out and pull samples from this one well at the corner of the property and do their own testing if they wanted to. And this committee met like 4 times a year, and that only was like 2 years lived. They had this in place, and then all of a sudden something had happened and Michael got taken away from this for a while. And then when he comes back into writing comment letters about this because of concerns he still had, he realized that they got leadway again, and there was not the requirements as they had been required previously, and it wasn't very strict. So they were testing only a few wells instead of all of them, and they were only testing at a certain level in the well, which the reason that was banned at first when they did listen to Michael was because Michael proved in a study and a demonstration that there was floaters and sinkers. So the chemicals sometimes float, and where they were testing, taking water samples from, was in the middle. So they, of course, the readings weren't as accurate and was showing that they weren't harmful. But you have all these very harmful things at the top and at the bottom of these wells. They ended up doing away with all the well testing with the Citizens well. It got covered up eventually, and they have just literally ignored this.
And even though the Citizens well was covered up, keeping the citizens and the company in the dark about what exactly is in the groundwater, there are still a considerable amount of damning reports coming from the company itself about the leakages into our water.
So he started to pull these maps and stuff from before where these concerned areas were, and sure enough, it lined up with some of the stuff we were looking at in these photos. And he's like, oh yeah, this is really not good. And when he started to pull the data from their charts over the last several years for these permits or variations or modifications that they were asking to do and just being granted without anyone looking into it, he realized that a lot of the data had never even been added up in their permit request. So when he calculated the data, they were literally reporting that there was severe leakage in these wells and tombs that were holding this waste. So the data was accurate. They were putting it in, but nobody was totaling it up, and nobody was bothering to do enough thorough research that they noticed they weren't being totaled up. So there was like some, what Michael says could be hundreds of thousands of gallons of just waste that are disappearing. There's no record of it leaving and being transported elsewhere. And it's not in the tombs. And according to their own diagrams and graphs that they've provided over the last several years, there's no explanation to where this stuff goes.
The truck manifests of things that got handled, a huge amount more than what they say they put in the ground.
There is definitely red flags all over the place. They can't explain any of the sudden drops in the weight being stored inside some of these tombs. They can't account for where this waste goes. They say it can't go in or out, but they don't have any records of it being sucked out of there. So where is it? It's not hard to see that they're definitely dealing with some leaking somewhere. It's very scary.
It's thousands of gallons.
I've been thinking about this quote a lot. Gray's law states that any sufficiently advanced incompetence is indistinguishable from malice. I would have to say that this is under a magnifying glass with any public serving institution and any mega corporation that affects the populace. When we come back, we will inspect either gross incompetence or gross malice, and some of the effects it has had on the local population. You are listening to Gulf Rising.
Change the locks to your box of things. Out on the street, but sure as hell kept your ring. You wanna lie and cheat, well, whose food you gonna eat now? Whose bell you gonna ring a ding ding? Playing around like a cat with a string. Why don't you call your mama? See if she wanna make up the spare room so you can stay. Why don't you call your mama? See if she gonna float you alone till you get paid. I don't got time to give my time of day. Why don't you call your mama? Call your mama. I see you creeping like you'll never get caught. We know a leopard never changes its spots. Did you ever wonder? Perhaps your days are numbered. One time you're gonna hear gunshots. Head in the cloud like you're some kind of king. Why don't you call your mama? See if she wanna make up the spare room so you can stay. Why don't you call your mama? See if she gonna float you alone till you get paid. I don't got time to give my time of day. Why don't you call your mama? Call your mama. Call your mama, a ring-a-ding-ding. Call your mama, a ring-a-ding-ding. Call your mama, ring-a-ding-ding. Call your mama, ring-a-ding-ding.
There have been very little repercussions for a company that seems to be poisoning a whole region. But what happens when a hurricane hits and you have toxic waste sitting out in the open?
They were fined at some point right after Laura because that stuff got blown around and washed away. Where did it go and what is in it? Because they're now proposing to be a larger hub for chemical storage until it can find another place to go. So, and the regulations don't exist around that. Obviously, there is no one policing them on the stuff that's piled up for miles underneath that covered pavilion.
The consequences from this very foreseeable occurrence were blatant and impossible to ignore.
They said after Laura coming back from evacuation and being out of town that the smells were so horrible and it was further reached. So that's when the neighbors at 3.4 miles away from the facility started to notice the smells at a certain time during the day. The other thing was they all said breathing problems, headaches, nausea, chest pain, and muscle weakness, fatigue, brain fog. All of those symptoms started after Laura, where it was happening on a daily basis, where you couldn't go outside, had to turn your air conditioner off. Some of them to the point where they were calling Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. He's already made citizen reports about this, but nothing. He had never even been contacted again by these people. I had a few people fill out other surveys based on their children's symptoms. They all complained of night tremors and chronic fatigue and high blood pressure, even in the children, all after Laura.
But it's not just the people and the plants who are suffering.
They said since Laura, it's been unbearable. That was about 4 years ago. Some people apparently have cattle or had cattle, and the neighbor suspected that their neighbor, who is also employed by industry, the neighbor was pretty convinced that the cows had died because of some kind of contamination to the water. They said it was one of the days where the very next day the chlorine or whatever was in the water coming out of the faucet was so strong that they could not even wash their face or brush their teeth with it, that it left like bleach-like stains on towels. Then something I have been saying about the water in sulfur was I've had a couple of dogs through the last 4 years suddenly come down with this rare kidney disease and just die. And when they're young and well taken care of, inside animals. And I know other people in our neighborhood that were experiencing the same issues with their pets, sudden kidney failure, and then their pets would just die when they were relatively healthy and young. And the man who told me about the cows also said that there were several dogs in the neighborhood that had suddenly got this kidney disease and died in the last 4 years. So there is definitely something to that for sure. Across the board, though, this has always been an issue and something that was in the back of their mind, that something was not right there. So no matter if they lived there pre-Laura or, post-Laura, they know this has always been an issue.
If something was hurting you this much, wouldn't you say something? Wouldn't anybody say something?
Every one of them that had strong symptoms had also reached out to CWMI on multiple occasions and said, like, this is what's happening and we think it's coming from your facility. Like, what's in this stuff? Why? What is this stuff? Is this what's making us sick? And every single time they were told that they should not be alarmed, that this was at no way, shape, or form a risk to the public, and basically take some Tylenol and go lay down. Had nothing to do with them. They were looking for them to come out and reassure them, and literally there was no action on their part to even show any concern for them or understanding.
This is where it becomes malice to me. It's one thing to be ignorant. It's another thing to show disregard and contempt for the citizens whose health you are affecting. And it's been like this since the beginning.
It's definitely criminal. The other thing I will tell you, I feel like it's important, it is not a secret. It might be for as far as public record goes, but my dad and my uncle, they all worked at PPG originally when they were very young men. And PPG is one of the first, it was Vista something back then, but they were the ones who poisoned Mossville, that plant itself. And my uncle drove vacuum trucks, and he had been instructed to go out to carless even when they weren't accepting waste. And he would meet and they would empty his tank, and sometimes they just emptied it down back roads. And this is a known fact that CWMI actually encouraged this because they were to their max capacity, or it was something that they weren't supposed to be taken off of other people's hands. And they were dumping it straight into the ground. Sometimes there was turf wars that Michael said he can definitely verify that much. There was turf wars when they were meeting up on back roads to empty what the chemical dump could not accept, there were other refinery people from different companies doing the same. And so they would have turf wars over who was going to illegally dump out there on the side of the road at John Brannon Road and other places. Even state-run facilities were doing it. Go down the road and open your valve, and they would just let it empty out onto wherever they were.
This has got to be one of the lowest aspects of humanity, exposed on Gulf Rising.
Maybe I'm foolish, or maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm lying. But I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. Take a look in the mirror, and what do you see? You see it clearer, or are you deceived in what you believe? 'Cause I'm only human after all, and you're only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put your blame on me. Some people got the real problems. Some people out of love. Some people think I can solve them. Lord heavens above, I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. Don't ask my opinion, don't ask me to lie, and beg for forgiveness for making you cry. For making you cry. 'Cause I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put your blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. Oh, some people got the real problem. Some people out of love. Some people think I can solve them. Lord heavens above, I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. I'm only human. I made mistakes. I'm only human. It's all it takes to put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. 'Cause I'm no prophet or Messiah. You should go looking somewhere high. I'm only human after all. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put the blame on me. I'm only human. I do what I can. I'm just a man. I do what I can. Don't put the blame on me. Don't put your blame on me.
Everyone's just gotten more and more lax around the rules and the policies there. And basically what they're going to ask for next is, instead of semi-annual or every quarter, they want to test all the wells that haven't been in question. They want to go down to testing only once a year, and they only want to test at a certain level of water, which is now proven to be faulty testing. There's no way that that can give you an accurate reading, and that is set up to avoid having to test and have negative test results.
Remember Venture Global, the LNG shipping plant from our last episode? Well, it is the same LNG shipping facility whose toxic waste is the reason that this meeting was called. It is the reason for the ask for more space for toxic waste.
Some of these chemicals came from places like Venture Global, Sasol. All the contaminants that were in the ship channel after Hurricane Laura are all the same contaminants that they store there. The same reasons we have seafood advisories and fishing advisories right now those are chemicals, mercury and things like that, that would be stored in these tombs from those same companies.
In essence, this issue right now is one with Venture Global, and the issues with Venture Global, in part, are also issues with chemical waste mismanagement. We are unraveling a many-headed beast, which zoomed out feels so Goliath. So let's zoom in. Where are the specific leaks? What are the specific problems? When we are writing comments, what are the specifics that we are talking about?
Okay, they're saying these are all natural fluctuations, but that's an awful lot of up and down, and some places like this, major fluctuation.
When these other ones are more even.
Yeah. So DO1B and FO5, if they want to talk about that, the DO1B specific conductance, and then look at the FO5.
Oh, wow.
All right. I guess that would be the thing to concentrate on. The specific conductance graphs show that something is happening. Mm-hmm. Something is happening underground that is dynamic. All right. And then we have the thing over there on the other side with the slurry wall at cell 7 with 14 to the north with the leachate collection system.
Right.
In other words, there are plenty of indications that their contention that everything is steady and stable and there's no possible movement of poisons out of those cells, and there's therefore no need to be checking different sands and no need to be checking more than once a year.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's hard for Michael to agree to such language. He's been in this fight for a while. Robin has more than just cause to be concerned, however.
There are no solid grounds, especially when you start going out towards the CWMI site. That's right before you get to Hackberry and then the Gulf. There's no way to do this safely, especially the closer you get to the coast, because of all the illegal, unreported, or self-reported and policed throughout the years. There's no way for us to really know, any of us that are here today, to really know what's already been done. And that's what makes this even more dangerous and more concerning. Instead of learning our lesson, we just keep testing more and more, like, enough's enough. This stuff is going to go terribly wrong for all of us.
And that's what climate activism is coming to. We are ending the era where it is us versus them, because there is no more choice. It is us for all of us. And that is what I want to leave you with the most. However horrific the underbelly and the darkness may seem, the survival of our species rests on our compassion and ability to work together. Gulf Rising is produced by fishermen involved in sustaining our heritage and the Habitat Recovery Project. It is supported in part by the Say No to LNG campaign. If you are interested in writing a comment about this episode to be submitted to the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, you can find more information on our website at gulfrising.com and on our Instagram at gulf.rising. Songs played today were People Gonna Rise Like the Water by the Peace Poets, Black Leaves by Kirby, Stand Up by Cynthia Erivo, The Lord is Waiting and the Devil is Too by Johnny Sansone, People Grinnin' in Your Face by Ruthie Foster, Tammy Nielsen's Call Your Mama, and Rag and Bone Man, Human. This has been another episode of Gulf Rising. I am your host, Misha Mayer.
The people gonna rise like the water. We gonna face this crisis now. I hear the one